some loop challenges. So we're going to work with Python loops and try to mix Python loops with some text questions here. So let's go through one by one and we'll take a look at different options. So number one, it says create a loop that prints the string vertically. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to print A and then B and C and D and E, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So what I got to think about here is I need to go through the string letter by letter and print it on a different line. Okay. So now I've got two different options to do this. Okay. One is I'm going to use index in range. And what I want to do is I want to start at the first letter, the index of which is 0. And I want to go all the way to the last letter, okay, which is Z, which is the 26th letter of the alphabet. But because we started here at 0, Z is actually the 25th letter in the sequence here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, blah, 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 up to 25. Now, if you remember, the range function is not inclusive. So I need to do 26, not 25. So it's the number of characters. So then what I would do is I'm going to print text index. So what it'll do is when I start my loop, it'll go index is 0. So text 0 is A. Comes back around. Index becomes 1. Text 1 is B, and so on and so forth. So let's run that. Okay, so you can see how that has worked. So A, B, C. I've gone through each letter individually. And maybe this will help make it clearer. If I do this, we can see the value of index as compared to the letter that's printed. So we got, again, as I mentioned, 0 through 25, but here we put 26 because there are actually 26 characters. Now, here's what happens though. If let's say we wanted to change the string. So I cut off two different letters, run it. Now I get an error because it's trying to do 24 and 25, but 24 and 25 are now missing. So the easiest way to fix that is to use the length method. So length of text. So no matter what the length is, I can now print vertically. Okay. That's one method. Okay, so let's get rid of that. The other method, which we can use, is for letter in text. Okay. Now, if you're familiar with other programming languages, this is called a structure called for each. So if you read this in your head, for each letter in the text, I chose letter, I could have used X, I could have used Y, but for letter in text, text is the name of our string, I want to print the letter. If we run that, okay, we get the exact same thing. So what this does is it iterates, which is kind of a fancy word for go through one by one. It goes through each letter one by one and prints that letter. So either method is fine for this case. Okay. Now, let's move on to number 2. Number 2 is create a loop that will print the string horizontally by adding each letter to message. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is, again, we're going to be iterating through the text, one letter by letter by letter by letter, and then each letter we're going to add to message and then print out the message. This is kind of a really common structure. You'll see this in a lot of different programming situations. Okay. So same thing, I can choose whichever method I want to use. I'm going to use for letter in text. Oops, text. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be adding each letter to message. So message plus equals letter. Okay. And that's it. So let's run it. Okay, so you can see how it printed it out in order. Now, if this makes it a little bit clearer, I'm going to try this. Print letter. Oops, sorry. That doesn't make it any clearer. Print letter, and then print. Actually, tell you what. Do it this way. So I'm going to print letter, comma message. So you can see what the value of letter is and what the value of message is through each loop. Okay. So when we start, message is nothing. There's nothing in the quotes. So the first time through the letter is A. We add A to message. So the message is now A. So I printed A. Okay. Swing back around. Okay. Now our next letter is B, which is shown here. So I add B to message, and I printed message. It is now AB. Okay. So on and so forth. I come back around. Next letter is C, which you see here. I add C to message. So now it is ABC. And it's just so on and so forth all the way down to the end. Okay. So that is that. Now you notice for letter in text, it only goes in one direction, forward, from left to right, okay, from start to finish, depending on how you want to define it. Okay. So our next, oh, by the way, there is another way to do this in Python. I'm intentionally not showing that because we want to show how the for loops work. And again, this is a very common structure that we'll run into. In other programming languages, you might not have the Python shortcut. Plus, this works with Python 2 and 3. Okay. Number 3. Now we're getting a little bit more of a challenge. Create a loop that prints the string backwards. So instead of from A to Z, we're going from Z to A. Okay. So let's first print it vertically. So I cannot use for letter in text because, as I just mentioned, it only goes from left to right, from start to finish, from A to Z. Okay? I need to go backwards. So if I was thinking about this, I want to start at Z. Now the index of Z is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, boom, 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 25. Because remember, we start at 0, go up, this is 25. So what I'm going to use is for index in range. I want to start at 20, well, I want to start at 25, and then I'm going to count down to -1, because I want to go to 0, and then it's 1 past 0. And I'm counting down by -1. So I'm going to say print text index. Let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see here, it's printing ZYX. So I know that the first part of the program is working correctly. So I've started at the last letter, 25. I've printed 25. Come back around, I've gone down by -1 to 24, 24, Y, 23X, 22W, etc., till we get down to 0. Just like before, it does not actually get to -1. It stops at 1 before that. Now, what we want to happen, though, is we want to get it in one line. So we just do the same thing we did up here. We just say message plus equals text index. And then outside the loop, we print the message. Let's run that. And you can see now we have string is reversed. Again, there's a much easier way to do this in Python. We're practicing loops. Okay. And also, just to maybe help with this, if I print text index and message, actually I'll go one better. We'll print also the index itself. So index, text, index, and message. So you can see, kind of see what's going on with the values. Okay, so you can see it starts at 25, which is what we wanted. That gives us the letter Z. We've added Z to message because it started as nothing. We flip back around. Now we're on number 24. The letter is Y. We add Y to message, which is now Z, so ZY. Come back around, so on and so forth. Now, like a previous example, if, let's say I added that, and if I run it, okay, I don't get the numbers. Okay, so what I want to do is, again, I want to use the length keyword here, and length of text, and we'll try that. Okay, so you can see I get an error. Okay, you remember the length is, if it's the alphabet, the length is 26 because there's 26 letters. But we started at 25 because it's 1 minus. So we need to do 1 minus here as well. And then if I do that, we get 987654321 because we are going now backwards. We're starting at the end and working our way around until we get down to A. Okay. So I'm going to take this part out because it's not part of the question. Okay, moving right along. Number 4. Okay, create a loop that prints every other letter of the following string. Okay, so again, loops. We have 2 types. We have our 4-letter in text, which is like a for each loop. And then we have 4 index in range. Now, 4-letter in text can only be used if we are starting at the beginning. So here we're starting at the beginning, which is good. So far we can use it. But notice it says prints every other letter. Okay, so we want to print the 0th letter, the 2nd letter, 4th letter, 6th letter, 8, so on and so forth until the end. So we're going to use 4 index in range. Starting at 0, we're going to the end, so I'm just going to use length or len of text. And I'm going to use step, in this case 2, because it says every other letter. That's 0, 2. So if I print, or message plus equals text index. So again, I'm just getting every other letter, so 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and adding it to message. I'm going to put a little print here so we can see what's going on. Index, text index, and message. So I'm going to run that. And you can see 0 is I, so message becomes I. 2 is a space, so I space, you can't see it. 4 is an H, so I space H. 6 is the letter A, so I space H A, and so on and so forth down to the last message. Okay? So the key thing to think about here is prints every other letter. Okay, so I know that I'm starting at the beginning, but I'm going up not by 1, but by 2. So since I'm going up by 2, I have to use the index because 4-letter in text only goes 1 by 1. Okay, now, this is getting a little more complicated. We're adding a little bit to it. So create a loop that prints only the capital letters. Okay, so I'm thinking to myself, I need to start at the beginning. I need to go through and check every letter. Okay. So since I'm starting at the beginning, I'm checking every letter. I can use letter in text. Okay. So the problem says print only the capital letters. So I need to know, just think about it in English. So if the letter equals the capital letter, so we use the upper method, change letter to upper. Then I can say print, for now, letter. Oops. So I run that. Okay, you can see Hiroshima is a beautiful city, exclamation point. Punctuation, lowercase, uppercase, there's no difference, so it prints punctuation. Space, uppercase, lowercase, there's no difference, it prints the spaces. Now instead of printing the letter, we want to do the same thing we've done previously. is add it to message. Okay. So I can do the same thing I did before, print letter message, and you can see what's going on inside. So the letter is H, I add H to message. Letter is I, add I to message. Letter is R, add R to message. So on and so forth until we get the final result. Okay, so a little bit more complicated, but basically what you were doing, again, is you're iterating through the string, letter by letter, checking to see if that letter was an uppercase letter, and if so, adding it to the message. Okay. Now, this is a very similar problem. Okay. It says, create a loop that counts the number of capital letters and lowercase letters. Okay. So notice, we're not printing the capitals, we're not printing the lowercase letters, we're just counting which is which. So we need to keep track of those numbers. So I've made two variables. One is capitals and one is lowercase. So when we start the program, we don't know how many there are. Okay, so 0 and 0. So again, I need to go through every single letter. I'm going to start at the beginning. I'm going to go to the end. So I'm going to use for letter in text. And it says, count the number of capital letters. So if letter equals letter.upper, I can say capitals plus equals 1. So that adds 1 to capitals. If letter equals letter.lower, lowercase plus equals 1. So I'm counting the number of capitals, I'm counting the number of lowercase letters, and then I just print it out at the end. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so I have 19 capitals and I have 30 lowercase letters, and that is the correct response. Okay. And then the final super loop challenge, this one's a bit more difficult for a couple of reasons. You have to really think about how this one works. Now again, here's one solution. There are others, of course. It says create a loop that prints only letters that are doubled. It says print them as capitals. So for example, blah, 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 SSUIAAOWCC comes out as sacred. Okay, so we have this text and we want to print all the doubles. Okay, so thinking about this, I'm going to start at the first letter, okay, but I'm comparing the first letter to the second letter. So because of that, I cannot use for each, because for each only does one letter at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use for index in range 0, and I'm going to go to the length of text. So it takes me to the last letter. So if I'm on 0, which is 1, I want to compare this to this and see if they're the same. Okay, so this is 0, this is 1. So if text index equals text index plus 1. So that means I'm checking index, which when we start is 0 and 1. If they equal each other, I'm going to say print text index dot upper, because it asks us to print upper. Okay. Again, there's going to be some problems with this, and we're going to work through them to get an idea. So I'm going to run that. Okay. So I've got invalid syntax because I forgot a parenthesis, which happens. Okay, so I've got an error. If text index equals text index plus 1, index out of range. Okay, out of range means that it has gone beyond the limits of this. Okay. So what's happened is I've gone all the way to here, but I'm trying to compare it to the next character. There is no next character. Okay. So I just want to compare the last two. So I need to stop before I get to here. So I need to do length minus 1. Okay, let's run that. Okay. Now you see I got M and I got A. Okay, so something isn't working right. Now let's look at what's different about the M and A characters. So I go through here, I see I have lowercase m, I have uppercase A and uppercase A. But I have small g, large uppercase G, let's see, and I have lowercase s and uppercase s. So it's not working because the comparison here, because let's say lowercase g is different to uppercase G. That's why it's not working. So I have to think about how can I convert everything. Now at the end of this particular question, I want everything in capital letters anyway. So what I could do is I could say text.upper here. And what that does is it just converts all this to uppercase. And then I don't have to worry about it down here. So let's try that. Okay, so you see G-O space S-Y. Oops, I have 2 Y's in there. Oh, because I got 3 Y's in a row there, so that's not good. So there's kind of a, well, that's what it says to do. So I'm just going to have to leave that like that. So anyway, test index. So again, so what I want to do is I don't want to print it vertically. So I'm going to add it to message like we've done before. Plus equals text index. And I'm going to run that. And now it says go Simbas with 2 Y's. I'll accept that. Yeah, so that's basically kind of how you do that question. Again, I can print here just to take a look at it. Index, text index, text. I'm going to try text index plus 1 and message. So we can kind of see again what's going on inside this particular problem. Okay, so I got, okay, so I'm only printing on the ones that count. So 1 gives me a G, and then plus 1 is a G, so I add the G. 4, there's O and O, so that gives me the O. 7, there's a a space and a space, and it kind of goes down through like that. Yes, that's the basic concept. This is a bit more of a complicated one. But the thing here is, what made me think about it is I had to use index because I'm comparing the first letter to the second letter, the second letter to the third letter to the fourth letter, and so on and so forth. Okay. So that is that.